So we can start our class, and I'll straight away go to question 3. Name the hormone secreted in the human body when one takes in a large amount of water. You are supposed to understand that there is a process in the human body called osmoregulation. Osmoregulation is actually conducted by the kidney as one of the major organs in the human body. And this is all about trying to maintain balance between the solute and the solvent within the bloodstream and the surrounding cells. I would want to give an example. If this is a blood vessel, it can be an artery, a vein, or a capillary. And these can be the cells around that blood vessel. If an individual takes in much water, that means the person is well hydrated. There's much water in the bloodstream, and any slightest imbalance of the solute and solvent between the bloodstream and the surrounding cells can be very, very catastrophic to the body if not taken under control. How? If I take in a lot of water, an excess of what I need to have, the blood will become hypotonic, or the blood ends up having a low concentration. It has more of the solvent or the water and less of the solute. So, the surrounding cells will end up having a hypertonic concentration. That means within the cells, we shall have a higher concentration of the salts or the solute or the sugars and a lower concentration of the solvent or the water. Through osmosis, as a physiological process, water molecules are going to move from a region of low concentration, a region of low concentration in the bloodstream, where the concentration is hypotonic, where there is more water and less of the solute, to a region of high concentration, where we have a higher solute or sugar and salt concentration and a lower concentration of the solvent or the water. At the end of the day, animal cells do not have a cell wall, unlike plant cells. These cells, on taking in too much water, they will end up bursting. The cells will become hemolyzed or hemolyzed, and that becomes a danger to the body. If the other way around, we might actually look at it in this manner. If I do not take in water, that means I have actually ended up becoming dehydrated. The bloodstream will end up becoming hypertonic, highly concentrated. It will have more of the solute and the sugars. The more the salts and the sugars and the less the water, the higher the chance of this blood ending up dehydrating the cells around it. That means the blood has more of the salts and the sugars or the solutes and less of the water. The surrounding cells might have more of the water. Now, a difference in the concentration can create room for osmosis. So water molecules will end up moving from a region of low concentration in the cells to a region of high concentration in the bloodstream. The cells end up shrinking. We shall say the cells have been crenated. So to actually prevent the cells from getting hemolyzed or bursting on taking in too much of the water, or to prevent the cells from becoming crenated or shrinking on losing water to the bloodstream, which might end up affecting their normal functioning, we'll ensure that there is osmoregulation to maintain balance between the solute and the solvent, and of course between the bloodstream and the surrounding cells, so that the cells don't take in much water and become hemolyzed, or the cells don't lose much water to the bloodstream and become crenated. The kidney helps us to actually perform that role in coordination with the central nervous system. And of course, in biology, the central nervous system will consist of the brain and the spinal cord. a center for coordination, a center for integrating any impulses. Any communication from any part of the body can get well interpreted, coordinated, integrated by the central nervous system. So when the blood passes through the brain, we want to actually enhance osmoregulation. When the blood passes through the brain, the hypothalamus part of the brain that is just below the thalamus, that is responsible for pain and pleasure, detects the concentration of the blood, can detect the concentration of the blood by ensuring that if the blood is highly concentrated, then there's actually a way of ensuring that more water gets reabsorbed back into the bloodstream from the kidney so that the blood can become diluted and its concentration is lowered. And in case the blood passes through the brain, more specifically in the hypothalamus region of the brain, and the brain detects a lower concentration of the blood to mean there's much water in the blood and less solutes, then there is a way in which less water can get reabsorbed back into the bloodstream from the kidney so that more of it can get lost to the surrounding after ultrafiltration in the glomerulus. Now, what happens then? When the blood passes through the brain, the hypothalamus part of the brain, and the brain detects that the hypothalamus has actually detected a slight change in the concentration relative to the neighboring cells, then the hypothalamus is actually stimulated. The hypothalamus becomes triggered. Because of its receptors, the hypothalamus becomes stimulated. It actually sends what you call a stimulus, a nerve impulse, a message, an electrical signal to the pituitary gland just below it. The pituitary gland ends up producing a hormone called ADH, and ADH is antidiuretic hormone. This hormone is also called vasopressin. And the main purpose of this hormone is to ensure that the amount of water in the bloodstream in excess can get released to the surrounding. That is now the kidney, before we can form urine. You see? So the ADH can either get produced in large quantities or in small quantities depending on the concentration of the blood. For example, if the blood passes through the hypothalamus part of the brain and the blood is very diluted, then that means we shall have a lower concentration of ADH hormone or vasopressin getting produced, so that the blood vessel is made less permeable, and also the kidney tubules, that is the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct, are made also less permeable so that less water can get reabsorbed back into the bloodstream, so that there's a lower concentration of water in the blood so that the blood becomes less diluted. For example, if the blood passes through the brain and one has not taken in water, the person is dehydrated. Obviously, the blood becomes highly concentrated with less water because this person is dehydrated. What happens? The hypothalamus is stimulated. It sends a signal, an electrical signal, an impulse, a nerve impulse, a stimulus to the pituitary gland as a master gland, a master endocrine gland. That master endocrine gland or pituitary gland produces an antidiuretic hormone, ADH, or vasopressin. This hormone, the ADH or the antidiuretic hormone or the vasopressin, gets produced by the pituitary gland, gets emptied into the bloodstream, and moves until it reaches in the kidney. It makes the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct of the distal part of the kidney, or the main end part of the kidney, to end up becoming more permeable to water. So more water will become reabsorbed back into the bloodstream to answer the question. A hormone normally produced in the human body when someone takes in a large amount of water or even a small amount of water, or the person is dehydrated, is then vasopressin or antidiuretic hormone or ADH. And of course, on the other hand, there's another hormone called aldosterone. This hormone gets produced by the adrenal glands just above the kidneys to ensure that there is too much or much reabsorption of salts back into the bloodstream. So when the blood is actually highly concentrated, then much water can get taken in. But to regulate the amount of water in the bloodstream and to actually ensure there's what you call osmoregulation between the bloodstream and the neighboring cells, the vasopressin or ADH is produced to ensure that the level of water between the bloodstream and the cells is actually maintained at a particular constant level.